This one for talking, you see the red light there, and it went through.
How's my hair?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting for June 6, 2022. At this time, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional territories and the oral practices of the Blackfoot Nation, which include the Siksika, the Kainai, and the Piikani. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. We're making this acknowledgement to demonstrate our continuing efforts to work together as we strive for reconciliation through increased and collective learning. At this time, if you can see in front of me is the Centennial Cup, and I want to say one more time, congratulations to the Brooks Bandits, their staff, the fans, the volunteers, and everybody for bringing the Stanley Cup back home again. And as I mentioned, I think we've had it for 4 years in a row now, too. I also want to thank our staff, Jordan Jones and Lisa Tiffin, and the rest of the city staff who worked very hard in a very short period of time in order to get that parade together on Tuesday, which was very successful. I also want to mention that in the last number of weeks, Brooks has received a lot of national media attention. First of all, starting with the Centennial Cup. If you hear Ron McLean on Hockey Night in Canada, he's mentioned it several times. The other point, too, we often hear Cale Makar, and it looks like they're going to be heading to the Stanley Cup, and they often mention that he was a former Brooks Band player. The other one I want to mention, too, is Haruran Singh, who does play-by-play for Hockey Night in Canada and the CBC. And he's often mentioned because he grew up in Brooks here, too. And I just want to mention about Haruran Singh. He was given an honorary Doctor of Law degree June 1st from Mount Royal University in Calgary, becoming the first South Asian, Sikh, and Punjabi person to receive such a degree at the school there, too. So Brooks has got a lot of attention nationwide in the last 3 weeks. Good, positive stories there, too. Okay, on to the meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first of all, moved by Councillor Idris that the agenda be adopted as amended by deleting agenda item 9A, personnel held confidential pursuant to section 17 of FOIP, and by renumbering the remaining items as required. All those in favor? Carried. Oh, you know what? We have a staff introduction too at this time, and I'll pass this over to Richard Mack.
Hi, thank you.
I didn't see her because the trophy was in my way. I apologize.
It's a big trophy. So yes, today we have Chantal Cyr. Chantal is our Public Works Administrative Assistant. She brings with us experience from Ontario and Alberta, such as from H&R Block, BCalc, and JBS Foods. Her first day was on May 19th. So congratulations, Chantal.
Thank you. I'm just very blessed to be here.
Well, thank you, and thanks for joining our team.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moved by Councillor Jessica that the minutes from the regular council meeting held May 16th, 2022 be approved. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Prentice that the Action Canada presentation, Closing the Urban-Rural Immigration Gap in Canada, be accepted as information. And I believe we have on the line Amanda Alfonso from Enbridge Inc. Is that right? Or is it Wendy?
Hi there, Amanda. Good afternoon.
Oh, okay. Hi, Amanda. Okay, the floor is yours, Amanda. Oh.
Perfect. Good afternoon. And my colleagues Nabil, Lisa, and Wendy will also be turning on their cameras.
Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready there.
Oh, perfect. Okay, sorry, I had a bit of a delay happening there. Well, good afternoon. My name is Amanda, and I'm an Action Canada Fellow. My colleagues Wendy, Nabil, Lisa, Veronique, and Kevin and I were part of a 10-month public policy leadership program focused on understanding the country and public policy choices for the future. And we specifically focused on immigration. We're pleased to be here today to share our findings, which included Brooks, Alberta. If I could perhaps ask for the video to be played.
How do you not tell me I need long johns?
The top 3 things to pack for Canada: long johns, comfort food, passport. How do you help immigrants settle in Canada outside Canada's largest cities? To answer that question, we spoke to 6 communities across Canada. 2 out of every 3 newcomers choose to settle in Montreal, Toronto, or Vancouver. But it's outside Canada's biggest cities where immigrants and their skills, creativity, and investments are most needed.
We need population, we need people, we need workers.
How do we make them feel at home? Over the past 6 months, we've been exploring why so few immigrants decide to settle down outside Canada's major urban centres, and how we can encourage more people to do so. We spoke to numerous immigrants, settlement service providers, politicians, and local community leaders to get a wide-ranging perspective. One of the greatest barriers to settling in a small town is lack of connectedness. Being isolated facing xenophobia, racism, and discrimination doesn't make a place feel like home. Newcomers also reported difficulty finding good jobs, adequate housing, and even reliable transportation services.
A newcomer is more than just a job. There's a whole life and a whole family wrapped around them. And if that piece doesn't work, they're not going to stay.
To address these gaps, settlement and retention need to be treated as a whole of community affair. We found innovative ideas across the country: municipal roundtables, immigrant mentorship programs, apps that connect newcomers to local services, and more. Small communities have so much to offer new Canadians.
When I got here, just the warmth of the people alone outweighs any winter, any day.
We're calling on governments, not-for-profits, employers, and other community members to come together to make a difference. There's a world of talent out there. Let's bring it home.
We are waiting for you.
Nous vous attendons.
We are waiting for you.
We are waiting for you.
We're waiting for you.
We're ready for you.
Thanks for sharing the video. Would you also be able to share?
Yeah, the video's over there, so go ahead. Can you hear us, Amanda?
Oh, there we go. I can hear you now.
Okay.
Were you able to see the video?
Yeah,
Sorry, we
yeah.
weren't able to see it from our end. Okay, perfect. And there was sound available?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Perhaps we can flip to the PowerPoint presentation. And my colleague Wendy will take over.
Thanks, Amanda. So, as she mentioned, we worked on a policy project, and this policy project focused on immigration.
Can you speak up a little bit there, please?
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, so we worked on a policy project that focused on immigration, and this is understandably so because Canada benefits hugely from immigration and puts in significant efforts to bring newcomers to our country. Could you fast forward about 2 slides, please? Thank you. So some of the questions that we had while working on this project were, once immigrants arrive to Canada, where do they go? Why do they choose to settle in certain communities? And how can we help them such that they want to stay in those communities? So we looked at small and medium population centers across Canada because we believe that these were the areas that could most benefit from improved long-term settlement procedures. Even when newcomers do move to these towns, the retention rate is often very low, and we wanted to figure out why that happened and what could be done to fix it. These smaller communities have actually the very unique ability to provide a holistic whole of community approach to settlement that larger cities just don't have, and we wanted to capitalize on that opportunity. Essentially, our goal was to analyze existing settlement services and offerings within these communities, identify gaps, and develop recommendations to help them better address immigrant settlement needs. To support our research, next slide please, we conducted a literature review along with nearly 40 interviews with various stakeholders across the country. And among these interviews include case studies featuring 6 communities, including Brooks, as well as Fredericton, New Brunswick, Rimouski, Quebec, Smiths Falls, Ontario, Swift Current, Saskatchewan, and Whitehorse, Yukon. So throughout our research, we identified enablers and barriers to successful settlement.
So we put these enablers and barriers into a value proposition canvas. It might be hard to see, but it serves as our analysis tool. On the right side, you see the newcomers, and their objective is to find a new home, and you see the different needs that they have, as well as the obstacles that they face. On the left side, you see the services that are offered by the communities, as well as the way that these create gains or relieve pains for newcomers. This is a canvas that allows us to assess whether the communities, the services that are offered by communities actually meet the needs of newcomers. And what we find is that while there are multiple efforts, sometimes these efforts are insufficient, and in some cases they might not exist. And of course, is not specific to Brooks, but across the country. If you move to the next slide, I can continue. We've identified 5 major settlement gaps that really directly relate to the needs that newcomers face. The main gap really is around the need for connectedness and a feeling of isolation that newcomers might face, especially in smaller towns. While many communities design activities such as social and cultural engagement or mentorship program, there's still much left to do. And it really relies heavily on the personal engagement of settlement workers and the local culture of the host community. So there's a real need for more formal, structured initiatives that can prevent feelings of isolation, create a systematic support network. The other thing that I'd like to flag is all newcomers know that there's a gap between the promise of jobs in small towns and the reality of underemployment and barriers to foreign credential recognition. Many of the immediate job opportunities don't match up to the qualifications, skills, and desires of newcomers. Someone who trained for years to be a nurse might not want to work as a retail sales associate. And this is where credential requirements can be a real obstacle and where resources may not even exist in smaller communities. And finally, racism, xenophobia, and intolerance are not always so subtle. We found that while settlement agencies may encourage newcomers to support incidents of racism and discrimination, they don't provide direct support on what to do when such an incident takes place, or even provide guidance on how to report such incidences. Moving back to Amanda. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Nabil. So to address these gaps, we identified a number of recommendations to help communities approach immigration settlement and retention as a whole of community affair. We focused on 10 key recommendations, but also have a number of other recommendations that we've included in our report. A number of these recommendations actually came from our conversations here in Brooks. Number 1 being employee evaluation tools to assess current gap, the needs, create a municipal roundtable newcomers to develop local plans of action that can help address the needs of all parties. Number 3, to engage service providers and employers in all aspects of immigration. Number 4, to develop local anti-racism strategies. And number 5, to implement an immigrant mentorship program. Lisa?
So the remainder of our recommendations, number 6, we need to leverage technology. We need to help connect newcomers with resources for housing, employment, and other essential services. Number 7, we need to develop and subsidize housing solutions. Things like rent-to-own options and provide temporary subsidies to newcomers to access transitional housing options. Number 8, we need to design and implement accessible transportation strategies that include community engagement in order to identify unmet priority needs. Number 9, encourage long-term incentives through employers. Small communities are often cited as a good place to raise family, and thus long-term strategies must include family-centered solutions. And number 10, we must promote local attractions and amenities. By showcasing our own attributes and advantages, highlighting local attractions and amenities, and promoting our uptake by offering welcome packages and discounted options to newcomers. Next slide, please. So where do we go from here? Based on countless hours of research and interviews, we've identified gaps and recommend policy reform to municipal governments, settlement agencies, community groups, and employers. We hope that our research findings will help inform organizations about the expectations and needs of newcomers and contribute to long-term settlement and retention of immigrants outside large urban population centers, leading ultimately to sustainable population growth, thriving economies, and diverse, inclusive, and welcoming communities. Through these recommendations and partnerships, we believe we can help rural communities flourish and ultimately settle the unsettled.
Amanda's.
I want to take this time just to say thank you to former Brooks Mayor Barry Small.
I'm going to get you to repeat
Time
that
to
again.
say
You cut
thank
out
you
there, yeah.
to former Brooks Mayor Barry Councillor Mohammed.
I think you thanked former Brooks Mayor Barry Morishita and our current Councillor Mohammed
Councillor-
Idris, right?
I did. Thank you. So thank you for being a part of our research and our case study. And if there's time, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions? Okay, I got a few, and maybe Councillor Idris could answer this too. How are we doing here in Brooks overall? No. Oh, we lost you there. Can somebody answer that?
Is that a question for us over here?
No,
Is that
it's
a
for you. Yeah. How are we doing overall in Brooks?
I mean, I think Brooks was definitely one of the case studies that we looked at, and we found that, you know, there was, and I remember it coming up in an article as well, I think because of the meatpacking plant. In general, you know, the participation of the private sector in supporting immigration was appreciated. We found that there was definitely support for immigration in the community, and which is kind of, you know, really shapes the culture. So I'd say you're doing really well, but of course you would know better. And
Maybe I can jump in if you can hear me okay. I've turned off my video to hopefully help the internet connection. But one of the things that came out in our interviews and looking at our literature review was, just as Nabil said, the meatpacking plant has a significant, but has also, I think, gone through a shift in terms of the maturity of the organization and being embedded in the community, but being able to respond to the community by offering things like tuition and scholarships, so people stay in the community, or that their families are able to stay in the community. So being able to offer programs and support that not only helps employees, but helps their families to feel a connection to the community.
Okay, how's Canada doing altogether? Like in, I know the stats, most people end up in the urban centers there. How is Canada doing overall in attracting immigrants to the rural communities right across Canada? And most of the places you studied were in rural areas.
I can maybe begin, and I can just add that Canada does well in attracting newcomers and immigrants. Where it struggles, and especially where smaller towns struggle, is in retaining them. So what we find is that in the first year, maybe 80% of the immigrants stay, but after 5 years, only 30 to 40% of them have remained. So that means that you see significant migration of, after a few years. So people come, but they don't stay. And that is really a challenge that, we found across the country, across a range of municipalities, including even medium-sized communities, that might have 50 to 100,000 people. Even those face struggles in retaining employees, retaining immigrants. And we found that this was specifically an issue in Atlantic Canada for the most part.
Okay, Councillor Goodenough.
Great presentation, thank you. I'm just reading through your Action Canada website here, .ca. I was just curious, like, if, will you guys be lobbying the federal government on behalf of small cities? Because I think a lot of small cities of our size would love to have and be more welcoming to people, but it's the financial burdens on the small businesses or maybe corporate companies. You mentioned, for example, when someone comes who has a nursing degree and they don't necessarily want to work in a Walmart per se, they want to do what their career or their passion is. Have you found a group that will lobby for these things to take place? Because it seems to me that that's kind of that's where the stop happens, is at the federal level. So I'm just curious. Thank you.
I can start quickly. I just saw Wendy also unmute. So actually, this program in and of itself allows for the general awareness piece of it. So through this program as well, we met a lot of currently sitting MPs. We met a lot of industries and people that will and are helping us push for this. Because that is a huge program, and that is a huge issue that we've encountered is, again, like Nabil was saying, is people don't stay. And how do you get people to want to stay? And then one of our sister cohorts, they did a presentation on remote learning. So we saw a lot of this during the pandemic is a lot of people started, either move back home or to their home community, or branched out from big cities. So without even having to lobby for the federal government or even provincial governments, it somewhat happened naturally. I'm not sure if Wendy can add a little bit more to that as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lisa. So another element of it is, so we mentioned that kind of holistic whole of community approach. And so especially in sort of smaller and medium-sized communities, working together, because as you mentioned, they do have those limited resources, they do have limited finances. So working together from municipal governments, those private industries, those small businesses, and various community groups such as faith-based organizations, working together really helps to improve those retention rates, to attract and retain those newcomers and help them to settle within the communities. And as Nabil mentioned, like the settlement part and the retention, that is the biggest challenge, because even when immigrants do come to these small cities, they don't tend to stay. So to get them to stay is that whole of community affair, and to work on those limited resources together by pooling those sources is part of the solution in helping that.
Okay, Councillor Woodrow.
Thanks. I'm just going to kind of build on that point about settlement again, because we are working on strategies to have our newcomers stay, right, and settle here. So on table 3 with the gains and gain creators and gaps, which of those would you say, and maybe Councillor Idris could speak to this as well, but which of those specifically do you think are the biggest gaps for us in Brooks? Like if we were to take a more targeted approach to some of these issues, I see that the ease of navigation, right, we're hopefully working on maybe having a public transportation kind of pilot program, but which one of these, or I guess like a few of these, which would be our biggest gaps here that could be impeding people from staying in Brooks and settling?
Go ahead and answer. Anybody there? Oh, we can't hear you.
Amanda, you're on mute.
Or you might not be on mute, but we don't hear you.
Still can't hear you. Go ahead. Somebody else want to answer that?
I can jump in quickly while Amanda works on the sound. So in that table, we did list the different enablers or gaps and so on by frequency as well. And so that was based off of the number of times that issue came up during our interviews, as we mentioned, among the 6 different case studies and the different community interviewees that we spoke to. And so some of the more common ones that came up, for example, connectedness and the feeling of integration with the broader community was one of the most common themes that was brought up. And so when newcomers feel like the community is a home and it's welcoming and they really feel at ease and like they belong in that community and they feel a part of that community, that is by and large, I think, one of the biggest enablers and the biggest reasons why they would want to stay in the community. You have, I think, the more common reasons such as jobs, good family supports, ease of navigation, as you mentioned, Councillor, but all of these kind of contribute together to that feeling of connectedness, because even when you have 1 or 2 of these, or you have a few problems, if you feel at home, that is kind of like the biggest contributor.
Yeah, if I can continue to add, I mean, in that chart you'll see, and there is some kind of respondent bias in there, but certainly the feeling of, of being othered is really something that drives people away. Racism exists and discrimination exists, across all communities. And what really helps people respond to them is and that's what helps people feel welcome, is if you have strong responses to discrimination and racism. And if you have community members, so we know that in Brooks, Alberta, you have a pretty large Filipino immigrant population and a pretty large Latin population, right? So having Filipino restaurants or Latin restaurants or community hubs like that will really go a long way because it's those community members who will keep the newcomers here.
Okay, Councilor Jessica, did you have a question? Oh, on your mic.
Yeah, you referred a number of times about them not staying. So when they first come here, 2/3 were going to larger urban centers like Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. And then within the first 5 years, you have a whole bunch more leaving. So what kind of percentage actually do wind up sticking in their smaller communities? And is that fairly regular across Canada, or was Brooks, for example, better or worse because we have a pretty diverse community to start with?
It varies a little bit across, well, actually it varies a lot across Canada. So depending on the province and the city, we don't have stats for everywhere, but as an example, the 5-year retention rate for New Brunswick is only about 42%. So that's quite low compared to the 73% for all provinces and territories as an average, and then it being even higher in the 85-ish% for Ontario, BC, Quebec, and so on. So it really does vary across the country, and even when you get down to the micro level, so at the municipal, depending on which city you're looking at, it'll vary even more.
Okay, any other questions? I want to thank you for your time this afternoon, and also Councillor Idris for his involvement in this one here too. So yeah, it was a worthwhile report and a lot of information in there, and it gives us something to work on, and we have to continue to work on that. So thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Okay.
Great, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, to the motion that the Action Canada presentation, Closing the Urban-Rural Immigration Gap in Canada, be accepted as information. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councilor Nesbitt that the following items of correspondence be received as information, update on council conferences and or workshops, and the accounts payable listing. I just kind of want to mention that I was at FCM at the conference in Regina last weekend. I'm going to summarize about 3 days of activities here in about 120 seconds here. The Honorable Dominic LeBlanc, Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs and Infrastructure and Communities, was there in person talking about the Housing Accelerated Fund. The Housing Accelerated Fund would aim to remove barriers and help municipalities build housing more quickly in an innovative and ambitious manner there. Also at the session was, there was a session on the recovery panel from the pandemic. RMA President Paul McDonald from Alberta was there. He said one thing we learned was the fragility of our supply chain, which, yeah, no doubt. The other one he talked about, well, we talk about energy security, especially with what's happening over in Europe. He talked about food security could now be an issue, something we have to work on. There was a session on affordable housing. Some of the ideas that they brought up would be to reduce the GST on rental housing. That would, of course, have to come from the federal government. Edmonton is getting rid of parking requirements. Some places are legalizing secondary suites, increasing density, and Edmonton is also automating permits to speed up the process there. Other topics that came up, is internet a critical service for Canadians? I think it is now. Should long-haul transportation be a federal responsibility? This comes after the loss of the Greyhound bus service. About public transportation in Regina, only 5% of residents in that community actually use their transportation system. The point is, how do you change the culture from a vehicle-driven society? And some municipalities, such as Peterborough, subsidize their daycare. Also speaking there, Senator Paula Simons talked about the federal government. They needs a better conduit to give money to municipalities. What happens now, sometimes the money goes to the province and it doesn't necessarily get back to the municipality, so we have to find a better way to do that there. Anyway, at these conferences, always nice to talk with other representatives from across the country, and in the end, a lot of us have the mutual challenges there too. So if anybody has any questions, I'll answer them on that. Councillor Prentice.
Yeah, I see here one place is looking at reducing the parking for housing. Did they elaborate on why they're doing that? The cost of land or whatever? Because like a place like Brooks, if we did that, we'd be in real big trouble. We don't have a bus system. We don't have zip here. We don't have a bus to Calgary.
Yeah.
Once a week.
I thought you would probably bring that one up because I brought that on. Yeah, and you're right. You know, in cities, if you have a transportation system, you can build an apartment building and nobody needs a vehicle as long as you're close to a transit system. These things in rural communities, I agreed, you know, don't necessarily apply. Parking is an issue, yeah. Even in a lot of neighborhoods, we have very limited parking, but yeah, but that's what they're trying to do is probably, you know, you can build apartment buildings, get rid of the parking lot on that, so, yeah.
So will they make a change on the money they'll allow for housing if they try to reduce the cost by land? Or
I don't know. I would have to delve into it a little bit more, but yeah. I know that would be that's a different debate probably in the city of Edmonton than what it would be, you know, in the city of Brooks, yeah.
And did they have a reason why the bus system was only 5%?
You know what, I think in Western Canada, and this is my own theory on that, is we have a culture of driving our vehicles. And when I was in Regina, it was easy to get around. You know, unlike even, it was easier than, Regina is a city of about 285,000, but it, you know, for me to go from my hotel to the convention center took me about 8 minutes. So that city's easy to get around, a lot easier than, let's say, Calgary, which is 1.3 million, or Edmonton, which is 1.2 million. So I think it's more of a culture, a rural culture, you know, of not getting rid of their vehicles there. Yeah, that's my theory on that. Councillor Idris?
I think it's also the easiness of having a vehicle. Like, for example, there are some municipalities, I have seen some municipalities in Europe, that if you wanted to drive past some tolls, there is many. If you wanted to park in downtown, there is many. If you wanted, so by the end of it's better for you not to use a car. But in Canada in general, and especially in this side of, like in the West, it's easier to have a car. There is no tolls, there is no that bad parking.
And a lot of parking.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. We build our arenas with a lot of parking. We build, yeah. Any other questions on? Okay, to the motion. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Prentice that the week of June 20th to the 26th, 2022 be hereby proclaimed as International Pollinator Week in the city of Brooks. Amanda.
Through the chair to Mayor Petrie and Council. The Environmental Advisory Committee of the City of Brooks, otherwise known as Eco Brooks, would like to request that the city proclaim June 20th through the 26th, which is also the third week of June, as International Pollinator Week. Having been designated a bee city since October of 2021, it is within Eco Brooks' mandate to acknowledge the role of pollinators within our community and ensure that residents can support and promote a healthy and sustainable habitat for pollinators. During the week of June 20th through the 26th, Eco Brooks plans to host a variety of family-friendly activities, with some being promoted through the committee's virtual platform. Activities will include a native plant and pollinator scavenger hunt, a local gardening meetup at the Lake Stafford Edible Community Garden, resident garden features, and many more. This celebration also aligns with the city's Welcoming and Inclusive Communities Partnership Plan and supports local programs and encourages community members to gather and celebrate this important cause. Therefore, the Environmental Advisory Committee of the City of Brooks, otherwise known as Eco Brooks, respectfully requests that the City of Brooks proclaim June 20th through 26th, 2022 as International Pollinator Week.
Any questions? To the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, moved by Councillor Wardrop that June 21st, 2022 be hereby proclaimed as National Indigenous Peoples Day in the City of Brooks. Richard?
Thank you. Through the chair to Mayor and Council, June 21st offers Indigenous peoples an excellent opportunity to share their rich, diverse cultures with family, members, neighbors, friends, and visitors. Indigenous peoples includes First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and they gather each year to celebrate and share their culture and their heritage on or near June 21st. National Indigenous Peoples Day is an opportunity to learn more about Indigenous peoples and their contributions to Canada. This year, there will be an event open to the public, and more details will follow on social media and the bulletin once the details have been finalized. Therefore, administration is recommending June 21st, 2022 be hereby proclaimed as National Indigenous Peoples Day in the City of Brooks.
Any questions? Councillor Woodrup?
It's more of a comment, but I would just like to take this moment to congratulate our neighbors in Siksika for settling their land claim that resulted in a $1.3 billion for them. Another step towards reconciliation, so I just want to recognize it as we do this proclamation.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. To the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Goodenough that Council formally adopt the 2022-2023 proposed recreational rates and fees. Randy.
Through the chair to Mayor and Council, staff completed a survey of the rates and fees of several similar-sized community recreation centers that have comparable services and amenities that we have here in the City of Brooks. The information obtained from the surveys was compiled and presented to the Brooks and District Recreation and Parks Board Indoors Committee on April 13th. The Indoors Committee brought forward the 2022-2023 proposed rates and fees recommendations to the board to review at their meeting on April 20th. It is important to note that the Indoor Committee and staff are not recommending a flat percentage increase to all the rates and fees, but rather the Indoor Committee reviewed each item individually and compared that to the sector average as determined by the survey to develop the attached proposed rates and fees. You will note the most significant increase is in the higher level swim lessons. This is due to additional hours of instruction required in these programs, which were not accounted for in the past. This increase will create consistency within the aquatic lesson fees as they will be based on a consistent rate per hour of instruction, which wasn't done previously. There are several fees, particularly those for admissions and memberships, that are recommended to remain the same. Therefore, the average overall percentage increase is 2.29%. As the Aquatics Department transitions from Red Cross to Life Saving Society programming for the summer swim lesson sessions, it's recommended that the aquatics lesson fees come into effect as of July 1st this year. Any changes in subsequent years will come into effect on August 1st to be consistent with annual increases to the recreation rates and fees. So at the April 20th, 2022 Brooks and District Recreation and Parks Board meeting, the following motion was made. It was moved by G. Screever that the Brooks and District Recreation and Parks Board recommend the City of Brooks Council approve the 2022-2023 rates and fees as presented, and that was seconded by D. Perkins, and that motion was carried. Therefore, the recommendation is that Council formally adopt the 2022-2023 proposed recreation rates and fees.
Any questions? Councillor Goodenough.
I'm sure your team has gone through this quite a bit, and I just had some questions, though. I've noticed, like in, maybe a clarification first. So sector averages, you surveyed other cities, other towns our size, and this is kind of the average, right? That's what we're saying here?
Through the chair to Councillor Goodenough, yes, that's correct.
Yep. So with that, then, I'm just looking at, for example, aquatic rentals. So for lap pool rental, swim club, it's $105 in Brooks, but on average, it's $183. And if you go down the list, there's actually quite a few where we're very on the cheaper end, which is good for our citizens. But I'm curious if maybe we were more comparable to other cities, would we need a rate hike overall?
Through the chair to Councillor Goodenough. So that was brought up at the meeting with the Indoors Committee as well as the board, and the general consensus was that we wanted to remain on the low side in Brooks. And I think the board and the Indoors Committee felt as though that they were comfortable with being significantly lower than some of those comparable communities, to keep rates and fees low for our community, for individuals in the community. So it was noted. I don't think at this point we would be looking at a huge hike to bring that back up, if that's kind of the consensus going forward, is that we want to remain on the low end.
Because even, for example, just for the CRA indoor track and the Fieldhouse morning, it's almost triple in other places. Or, you know, I'm not saying we want to, because I imagine it's a lot of our seniors that aren't a fixed income, but it's just interesting that as time goes on, things do have to go up eventually, right?
Yeah, and for the track in particular, in most of those other facilities, the track is located and accessible with other amenities as well. So that would be their general admission fee to get use of the track, and then also could go and use the pool or the fitness center, whereas our track fee is just exclusively for the track. So there's always kind of those inconsistencies with how we do our rates and fees and how other places do them too, and we try to pull those out and discuss those as part of the meetings when we review the rates and fees with the board.
Okay. Last question, because next on the agenda is going to be a request. I'm just curious if in your guys' budget and planning, do you set aside a budget to say, okay, every year we're going to help compensate a group, like the Chamber of Commerce, for example, requested a rate reduction. Do you guys work within that within the group, or is it kind of just as an on-need basis?
Through the chair to Councillor Goodenough. No, it's not worked in formally into the budget process or accounted for in the budget. The requests come up as needed. It's pretty hard to predict sometimes what those requests will be or who will be coming forward. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. To the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Randy. Moved by Councillor Jessica that council approve the donation of a field house rental at no cost for the Philippine Heritage Month celebration to be held on June 12th, 2022. Randy?
Yeah, through the chair to mayor and council. So members of the Filipino community in the city of Brooks are requesting a donation of the field house rental at no cost to celebrate Philippine Heritage Month on June 12th, 2022. And the event will take place from 9:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. The celebration will be open to the public and will include basketball, volleyball, and cultural games along with a potluck lunch. Approximately 700 people, along with community leaders from other municipalities, are expected to be in attendance. As the community does not possess any funds or resources and is reliant on donations for these types of events, a donation request was presented by members of the community to the Brooks and District Recreation and Parks Board at the May 18th, 2022 meeting. The value of the donation request at $544.85 exceeds the amount the board can approve. So their maximum amount that they can approve is $250. Therefore, the Brooks and District Recreation and Parks Board would like to forward to City Council the following motion made on May 18th, 2022. Moved by C. Safranovich, seconded by M. Stika, that the Brooks and District Recreation and Parks Board defer this request to City Council as the board's unable to provide assistance at the level requested. And furthermore, recommend to the City of Brooks Council use of the field house be provided at no cost for the Philippine Heritage Month celebration. And that motion was carried. Therefore, the recommendation is that council approve the donation of the field house rental at no cost for the Philippine Heritage Month celebration on June 12th, 2022.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Goodenough.
Question, comment, you decide. But at 700 people, even if everyone gave $1, they would be making money. So my thinking is that why would we not suggest that back to the Filipino culture group? And, you know, to me that if we're doing this for everyone, every group, you know, all of a sudden we're setting a precedent for every group that wants to rent the facility to say, ask for a donation, and we are a business. In a sense, we're a business, I guess. So that'd be my recommendation to that degree.
Yeah, and maybe Amanda can maybe, or Randy, this group is almost a little bit different because they're not an organized group where they fundraise or whatever. It's just sort of, I mean, the Philippine organization, I think they just kind of wanted to celebrate that one day. So unlike other groups that could be, but I mean, yeah, it's a whole month, but they're just using our facility the one day right there. Amanda, yeah, if you can speak to it.
Through the chair to mayor and council, yes, that is correct. It is just one day, which is June the 12th. And yes, again, this is a group that does not possess any funds or resources, and they are reliant on other types of donations or things like that. So again, this is a group that is not a for-profit or registered as a nonprofit or registered as a society. And again, this is a group that does not possess any funds or resources to apply towards this one-day event.
Just a couple comments to add to that, and maybe we do, I agree with, passing on the funding for this time around there, but maybe it does go back to Rec Board, with Marissa and John, Councilor Nesbitt here too, to maybe talk about that in the future, because we do open up a precedent here to Councilor Wardrop.
Yeah, I could speak to that just a little bit. Like, we didn't get, that notion was brought up that, particularly with the donation to the Chamber of Commerce, and it seems like there's, a lot of these situations are coming up where we are waiving a lot of fees, which is much needed revenue, particularly for our rec facilities right now. So the issue is top of mind, and we did start a discussion about it, but perhaps some kind of formal I don't know what to say, like some kind of outline of what amount of, like, what kind of threshold would we have to hit before we start saying no, right? Or finding some other, creative solutions like like selling tickets or something like that, because I wouldn't go so far to say that we're a business, but we do have to collect revenue to keep our facilities functioning as well. So it was top of mind, and we did have a discussion about it. But at this particular group, we felt was definitely deserving of the go-ahead.
Can we take it back, and I'll ask the two Rec Board members on this council here, can we take it back to Rec Board? I don't know if we come up with a formal policy on that, but sort of some recommendation on that in the future, because Councillor Goodenough does bring up a good point. If you got 700 people there, even at like a loonie a piece, whatever, you would certainly cover off on that, or you find sponsors in the community to cover off on that there too.
The only thing I would, sorry.
Councillor Nesbitt there.
One. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, this was brought up because they didn't really have anybody to access a way to charge for people to enter it. Like, what do you charge? Who's going to take the money? Yep. This is just people going in, showing their heritage, cooking foods for the people. No one's making a lot of money off of this, and it's something that's been going on every year. And personally, I think it's a great idea. And I know we get requested for free rent constantly. And that's why we do have the, was it $200 or $250 limit? And we have to go to council. And we thought, the Rec Board thought that this was something that's valuable to this community. And I can't remember the total number of Filipinos in this town, but it's huge. And this is just something we can give back to their organization, their society, so that they know that we appreciate them and to find out more about them.
Amanda?
One thing that council could consider is council could consider the recommendation for the donation. However, going forward, it could be as simple as maybe the Rec Board and the Arts, Culture, Heritage groups and maybe tourism, maybe they all get together and discuss different things that do come forward before they make a motion, because this could be something that could have been approved maybe through the grant process through Arts, Culture, and Heritage for their event. But I think if you wanted to have something formal in place, it could be as simple as just the three individuals or the three groups talking with one another, and then maybe these types of events could be they could utilize grants through a different avenue rather than bringing it forward to council.
Okay, Councillor Goodenough?
I think that raises a great point, Amanda. That we did give a $10,000, I believe, to Arts, Culture, and Heritage to apply for grants specifically for these types of events. And that maybe they have accesses. It'd be great to know if our community groups are actually knowing that there is support out there for exactly this purpose.
Councillor Woodrup?
I'd like to echo that I think there needs to be better communication to just the general public, groups like this, that there is money available, right? If through application with the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board, those sorts of things, because I know the board would love to see them. The thing about taking this back to the rec board, it's just a very time-sensitive thing. It's on the 12th, so that would be my only hesitation. Otherwise, I'd say for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we.
I don't want to take this one back, whatever, but no,
Yeah.
I just, maybe, and maybe I'll leave it up to the rec board to decide where we go in the future on that. And it doesn't have to be done like in the next week, but maybe in the next couple months there, because what we do is, as Councillor Goodenough says, we open up a precedent now, but no, it's no. And with this one here, it goes back to almost our presentation a little bit earlier about making sure that people feel at home and comfortable. So it goes back to what we talked about with our delegation a little bit earlier there too. Yeah, okay, Councillor Goodenough.
Last question, I promise. And maybe Amanda could help me on this. Would it be possible that direct this to Randy first. So the $554.85, that's for the rental of which part of the facility?
That's for the rental of the field house for those hours between 9:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m.
Right, so basically the whole day.
Yes.
It's rent. So maybe, it sounds like to me even to have that number it'd be interesting to know when we set that amount at $250 for. It probably needs to be actually raised to $500 or more, that we give the board approval to make their own decision instead of bringing it back to council. Because that's only a half a day rental then, at $250. Really, we should be giving that board more power to make these decisions instead of coming back to council over that. 'Cause that's a low amount.
Okay, Brandy, how do we do that then?
Through the chair to Mayor Petrie, I believe that would just be a change to the donation policy, so I can work with Amy on that one.
Okay, maybe what we can do is take it back to the
Back-
rec
take it
board
back to the board first
to
and then,
discuss
yeah.
it if you want to go ahead with that,
Yep.
and where we go with this one here then. No, okay. Councillor Jessica.
So this is the first time this situation has come up where a non-group wants to use a facility like this?
Through the chair to Councillor Jessica, as far as I know, yes. I mean, there might be other unorganized groups that don't come right out and tell us that they are an unorganized group of people, and it might just be an individual renting on behalf of a group or whatever. We get lots of different situations, but as far as I know, this is the first unorganized group that is doing a large public event in the facility.
Well, they're acting like a group. Maybe they should become a group, or maybe that should be a requirement, because I guess one thing, if there's a problem, who do you go to?
The facility renter, so whoever's name, it'd be almost like a campground permit, or whoever's name is on that rental contract is going to be responsible for the group. Yeah.
Any other questions? Councillor Prentice.
In the last 2 years with the pandemic and everything shut down, what percentage is the recreation being subsidized by? Or what do we lose and what percentage would make compared to the budget?
As far as revenues?
Yeah. Like, is it a big deal?
I know for this year, we reduced our revenue target by 50% again. And I'd have to go back and actually check the numbers to see where we're at right now. But I'll look into that. I can see what our percentage is.
Must have made a difference on the revenue big time in the last 2 years.
Oh, absolutely it has, yeah. The lack of rentals, for sure.
Okay, before we go to the motion, I think we have some ideas to go back to rec board before it comes back here. But okay, to the motion there. The council approved the donation of a field house rental at no cost for the Philippine Heritage Month celebration to be held on June 12, 2022. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Prentice that Macy Fensky be appointed to the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board for a first one-year term commencing June 7th, 2022 and ending June 6th, 2023. Randy.
Through the chair to mayor and council, the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board's mandates to assist both council and the city in providing opportunities for arts, culture, and heritage programs, events, and facilities in the city of Brooks. The board consists of 6 citizens at large and 1 city councillor. There's currently 1 vacant youth citizen at large position open. The vacant position was advertised and 1 application was received and reviewed by the board at their May 19th meeting. Therefore, the Arts, Culture, Heritage Board would like to forward to City Council the following motion for youth citizen at large. Marian Neester Carrazzo made a motion to appoint Macy Fensky for a first one-year term as a youth citizen at large representative on the City of Brooks Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board for City of Brooks Council. Tyler Wardrop seconded the motion, and that motion was carried. Therefore, staff's recommending that Macy Fensky be appointed to the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board for a first one-year term commencing June 7th, 2022 and ending June 6th, 2023.
Any questions to the motion? Councillor Idris.
So is it 1 year because it's a youth?
Through the chair to Councillor Idris, yes, that's correct. It's a one-year term for a youth member.
I think a lot of times the youth, because they move on after that. Yeah. Okay, to the motion. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Wardrop that the 2021 Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Statistical Information Report be accepted as information. Amanda.
Through the chair to mayor and council, all public bodies in Alberta are required to submit their Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy, otherwise known as FOIP, annual statistics to the Government of Alberta for reporting. Therefore, the City of Brooks' annual FOIP statistics have been uploaded to be aggregated with other agencies for annual reporting, and they are attached for your information. And therefore, the recommendation is that the 2021 Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Statistical Information Report be accepted as information.
Any questions? Okay, to the motion. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moved by Councillor Nesbitt that Nicole Oliver be appointed to the City of Brooks Environmental Advisory Committee as the member from Grasslands Public Schools for a first 3-year term commencing on June 7th, 2022 and ending on June 6th, 2025. And that's Amy.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council. Eco Brooks is made up of 12 members, which includes a member from Grasslands Public Schools. Grasslands has not had a member on the committee since the end of August 2021, and a letter was recently sent to them inviting them to appoint a new member to the committee. Grasslands has appointed Nicole Oliver as their member on the Eco Brooks committee, and she has been a member of the Brooks community since 2013 and has worked as an educational assistant for over 7 years at Griffin Park Elementary. Her interest in nature, care for the planet, and growing healthy food responsibly led her to permaculture. She has undertaken practices and initiatives at home to help the environment as well. Therefore, administration is recommending that Nicole Oliver be appointed to the City of Brooks Environmental Advisory Committee as the member from Grasslands Public Schools for a first 3-year term commencing June 7th, 2022 and ending June 6th, 2025.
Any questions to the motion? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Goodenough that Council award the 2nd Street West water main replacement to Brooks Asphalt and Aggregate Limited in the amount of $383,263.93, excluding GST, and furthermore, that $150,000 be funded from the water main replacement capital program and the remaining $233,263.93 be funded from the environmental surplus reserve. Alicia.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council. On May 4th, a request for a tender was posted on the Alberta Purchasing Connect and on the City of Brooks website for the replacement of the water main on 2nd Street West from Castles Road to 5th Avenue. The tender closed on May 24th with one bid submission from Brooks Asphalt and Aggregate Limited in the amount of $383,263.93, excluding GST. The city budgets $150,000 annually for the water main replacement capital program. Due to the cost of this project, staff had intended to carry forward this year's budget and use next year's budget to replace the water main in 2023. However, there has been another break in the water main, resulting in the need to do the water main replacement project this year. This project is $233,263.93 over budget. Therefore, staff recommends that council award the 2nd Street West water main replacement to Brooks Asphalt and Aggregate Limited in the amount of $283,263.93, excluding GST, and furthermore that $150,000 be funded from the water main replacement capital program and the remaining $233,263.93 be funded from the environmental surplus reserve.
Any questions? Councillor Prentice.
Is this area part of the old cast iron system there in that area? Or?
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Prentice. This is the yellow jacket steel pipe in this section, and there's been several breaks along that section recently.
Okay, that section's been replaced a few years ago with special wrap because of the gas in there. Then is that what's causing the breaks? And they had to, Castles Road and up that way, it was all replaced with special pipe wrapped in that yellow jacket. So is this a problem from that, or what is the causing the breaks?
I'm not sure the reason for the yellow jacket steel pipe. It could have been.
It was gas.
It was from the gas. So this time we're actually proposing, based on recommendations from the supplier, to use a different gasket on the PVC pipe. I'm not sure specifically what it is causing the breaks. I'm not sure if Don has anything to add to it, but I'm not sure of the specific cause.
How long will this fix it for? The rest of my life?
It was supposed to be
Councillor Goodenough said at least until the end of my term.
Through the chair to Mayor Petrie, I believe we consider a 25-year lifespan on pipes. So.
Oh, okay, good, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Councillor Goodenough.
I'm just curious, with the cost of everything going up, are we going to have to go back and look maybe at our budgeting for what we put into reserves every year? It's just getting, it's going to get worse and worse down the road, and I'm just curious if that's something you would recommend, or what do you think?
Well, we definitely have to look at potentially reducing the amount that we get, but this can be something that would be part of discussions during the 10-year planning and the budget cycle.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Juska.
Yeah, so you referred to the gas in the street. So there were two places there where that could be happening, and one was from the old pumps at Pheasant Sales or Davis, and then the other one would be there was a bulk plant and then Brian's Corner Service, which was actually pretty dirty, and you're referring to them going to different type of pipe because of that, and they probably avoided PVC because of that. So to go back to PVC, do the engineers know that there may be hydrocarbons involved?
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Jessica. Yeah, we specifically spoke to the distributor regarding there being hydrocarbons in the soil, and this was their recommendation and with MP as well, and this was their recommendation, was to use a different type of gasket with the PVC itself.
Okay, Councillor Wardrop.
I think I asked this about the garbage collection tender too, but there's only one bid. Hey, if we left that the tender open for longer, is it likely to get another bid? No, I have to ask.
Through the chair to Councillor Wardrop, I can't say specifically, but we've followed the process of having it posted on Alberta Purchasing Connect, which opens it up for the entire province. This is I don't want to say smaller project, but it's a smaller project and maybe not worthwhile for out of town contractors to bid on. You know, it was posted for 20 days for the public to be able to bid on, so.
Yeah, I'd just like to just add to that. When we look at Alberta Purchasing Connection, we can see how many vendors were looking at that tender, and there was about 8. Yeah, so of that 8 or 9, one only decided to bid. And the other ones being from bigger centers like Calgary and stuff, they're pretty busy there in these other centers. So maybe they felt they didn't have the time to do it.
I'd just like to, keep an eye on that. You know, it's not a great trend, you know, and especially if we've got these things coming up over budget, it'd be great to be competitive. If there's something that is keeping us from attracting more bidders or the people that are looking at these potential jobs, for whatever reason, they don't want to apply, then maybe we should, you know, take a look at that. I wouldn't know where to start there, but I don't know if that's average for 8 or 9 people to take a look and then only one bite. You said the other, like larger centers, I think you said they were getting more activities. That we said, John?
Yeah, like I said, they're fairly busy in all these other areas, and that's also why pricing has gone up as much as it has. In the garbage tender, for example, there was about 15 different businesses looked at that garbage tender. However, like I said, one bid. So. And
they're busy because these are bigger jobs. They're bigger jobs, more money in other centers that they would rather.
Well, it may not be so much that it's more money. It could be just that that's where they're located in Calgary, so they'd rather just work in Calgary rather than moving out this far out, mobilizing out to. And in all reality, this isn't a big job. So you're not going to get the interest in a small job where you're only tendering one block of water line, as you would if we were tendering 10 blocks. So,
thank you.
If I could just add an answer to Bill's question about that pipe and what's happening with it. We seem to be finding every leak is right at the balance spigot. And there just seems to be a small section on every one of them where electrolysis is just eating away the pipe. And every leak is exactly the same. There's just electrolysis working a small hole through every one of those bells.
I guess the disappointing part is that was not that many years ago, engineered and recommended and a lot of extra money spent, and you're turning around digging that whole thing up. That should have been good for 50 years. So that's what disappoints me. So I hope that they're putting something in there that's going to last, because that gas hasn't gone from there, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, we, like Alicia mentioned, we did check with our engineers, MP Engineering, and the pipe manufacturer to ensure that we're getting the best pipe that we can get and the best gaskets today. Now, a pipe should last 100 years in the ground. It's PVC pipe. I hope it does.
Okay, Councilor Jessica.
Yeah, I suppose it's a little bit late in the season too to expect a lot of bids to come up because everybody's probably committed to jobs already. When you only get one bid like that, though, you always got to wonder just how you're doing. And maybe it's hard to judge just because of the times we live in, but the $383,000 for a job of that scale, is that what you would consider a reasonable number?
I believe it to be. There's going to be quite a bit of road restoration. That road there has got a pretty good structure on it because it is a truck route. Well, it's not really a truck route, but a lot of trucks use that, so there's a good structure in that road. And by the time they get down and they do their trench, and there's probably a third of that is road work.
Okay, any other questions? It's nice to have so much technical experience on this council here to get ask those tough questions like that. Okay, to the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, moved by Councillor Idris that council approve the 2023 garbage truck tender facilitation in 2022. And that's you, Don.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council. In the city's 10-year capital plan, the Public Works Department has a garbage truck budgeted for replacement in year 2023. If a request for tender was facilitated in 2023 for the new truck, the truck would more than likely not be delivered to the city in time to replace the aging truck, therefore requiring costly repairs in 2023. If a tender was facilitated in 2022, the truck would most likely be delivered in the middle of 2023 during compost season with payment funding from the 2023 budget. Therefore, staff recommends that council approve the 2023 garbage truck tender facilitation in 2022.
Okay, any questions? Okay, to the motion, all those in favor? Carried. I don't know if Sandra's on the line. Is Sandra on the line? So there's no media here to ask it. Okay, moved by Councilor Goodenough that the meeting adjourn at 6:43 p.m. Oh, which 5:43 p.m. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone.